ورسوله الكريم أما بعد. Okay, I'm your brother Sheikh Abdul Qadir from Luton. Inshallah, I hope to benefit myself and you all, or some of you inshallah today, in this next 45 minutes or an hour or so. The subject I've been given to talk about is the responsibility of parents regarding the youth, Muslim youth. Now, without no doubt, this is one of the most important. Without no doubt, this is one of the most important aspects of preserving a Islamic society. That the parents, they understand their responsibilities towards their children, especially their youth. Now, I think some of us here in this room are parents already. Some will be parents, but even those who are watching, I'm sure inshallah you will benefit from this in some way. Allah Jalla wa Ala, He said in the Quran, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. O you who believe, save yourselves and your family from the hellfire. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ عَلَيْهَا الْمَلَائِكَةُ, to the end of the ayah. And then save the people from the hellfire, whose fuel is men and stones, as the ayah goes on to say. Now, in this ayah, Allah Jalla wa Ala is addressing the believers, those who possess Iman, and He's saying to you in priority order, first and foremost, is to save yourselves. And then He says, وَأَهْلِكُمْ. Then save your family. It's not the other way around, as understood by many Muslims today. They themselves, as parents themselves, carry out all sorts of fasad, corruption, bad deeds, slackness in implementing their religion. But when it comes to the children, they say, I don't want my child to be like me. I don't want my child to grow up in the bad way I am. I send him to the masjid, the Sunday school, masjid on Saturday, wherever he goes. I send him to recite Quran or read Quran every day from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. I don't want him to be like me. This is now in contradiction to the ayah, the verse that I mentioned. Allah said, save yourselves first, and then save your family. And then after that He said, and then save the people. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسِ, and then save the people. Some people, they forget themselves, and they concentrate, and they even forget their families, and they give all their attention, concentration, and efforts to the people. This is something we as du'ats and callers of Islam and people who are learned, we should take heed of. We should try to remind one another about this. That we make priority ourselves as parents, as individuals, and then our children. There's a hadith narrated by Ibn Umar in Sahih Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, every one of you is a shepherd, and everyone is answerable about his flock. What that means, every one of you holds a responsibility, and every one of you will be questioned about that responsibility which you have been given, which is under you. He goes on to say that the Khalif is the shepherd over his people, and he will be questioned about his subjects, his people. And a man is a guardian over the members of his family, and he shall be questioned about them. There you go. The role of parents is clearly exemplified there. That a man is a guardian over the members of his family, and he will be questioned about them. Don't think that you will not be questioned about your wife, about your sons, your daughters, grandchildren, or anybody in your household that is under your guardianship. A woman is a guardian over her household also, and over the well-being of her husband and her children also. and she too will be questioned about them. So the responsibility also lies with the mother. She has a number of responsibilities to conduct. And a slave is a guardian over the property of his master, meaning as workers. He's talking about slaves. But we can apply that to ourselves as workers, for companies, for organizations, for masajids, for dawah, for Allah's work, whatever field of work you do, you will be questioned about the property of the owner of that business or that work where you work. So beware, the hadith goes on to say at the end, beware, every one of you is a guardian, and every one of you shall be questioned about the trusts which he has been or she has been entrusted with. So, from the things which we have to, as parents, enjoin upon our children, is that we enjoin upon them first and foremost at-Tawheed, the oneness of Allah. Do we just teach our children, Allah is one, He has no partners. We don't believe in the Trinity, God has no son, and is that it? Is that the limit of the Tawheed that we teach our children? Or should we be teaching them more? The answer is we must be teaching them more than just this, because that is not sufficient. Any human, regardless of their religion, cannot accept that God is three or has a son. So really what we're teaching our children is something which is naturally inside them already. What we have to teach them about Tawheed is to recognize that Allah created everything, and that Allah is the one who is in control over everything. No human has control over the world, over the sun, the moon, the stars. Nobody created anything in this world from the creation, but Allah is the one who created everything. And He is the sole one who is responsible for its conduction, for conducting it. This is what we have to teach our children regarding rububiyyah. And then we have to teach them, then by default we should then worship that one who created us. We teach them the purpose of our creation, being in this world in the first place, is what? To worship Allah. As Allah said in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ I've not created the jinn or the mankind except to worship. So we teach our children that they have to worship Allah. You've been created to worship. And who is it better to worship than? Rabbul Alameen. The one who gave oxygen. The one who made gravity so we stand on the earth and don't fly away. Simple analogies like this to show them, this is your creator. The one who created this world. So worship Him. Then we teach them, when it comes to Tawheed, about the names and the attributes of Allah, so they can get to know Allah. Who is Allah? What are His names? How is He known? What are His attributes? What are His features? His characteristics? And we explain to them that Allah is nothing like you can imagine in your mind, but He's separate from His creation and He has certain attributes. So we teach them about Allah so their hearts become attached to the Creator. This is the first thing. Then we teach them about the prayer. To establish the prayer 5 times a day, in the day and the night. Then we teach them about fasting. We teach them about the Hajj and Zakat. And then we have to give them the means of how to apply this knowledge of Tawheed and these 5 pillars of Islam in their lives, in their daily lives. This is from the responsibility of the parents vis-a-vis the children. We must never give our children an impression that Islam is just a mere number or series of rituals. This is a big problem, and Sheikh Ahmed touched upon this as I heard myself. I will expand slightly, because I think it's important. And when you look around you today in all the masajids, look at the Muslims, the communities around you, you will see the children, the youth, they have been brainwashed into praying 5 times a day because it's a duty. Fasting in the Ramadan because it's a duty. Attending the khutbah and Jummah because it's a duty. Going, coming, going, coming. Go to the mosque, pray, and go back home. But they don't understand the spiritual side of Islam. The profound effect of those rituals that it's supposed to have on the soul and the mind and the way and how it shapes your thinking and your view of this whole world and life. This is empty. This is vacant in the majority of the Muslim youth. Majority of the Muslim elders as well. They treat Islam as mere rituals, as mere, habits. Let's get on with this habit now. I've been taught this by my parents. Why do I do this? Because my parents done this. My parents told me to do it, so I'm doing it too. That's it. They don't question, why am I doing this? What is it for? How will this benefit me? How will it benefit the ummah? Where is the spiritual side? So it's important that when we train our children, train our youth as parents, that we give them this spiritual understanding of Islam as well as the practice and rituals, which are no doubt part of Islam also. They should also learn how those rituals lead to happiness. By performing just the mere rituals, you will never be able to see happiness or feel happiness or experience happiness just by performing it. There needs to be this added ingredient, that is understanding of why you are doing these rituals. Then the happiness comes. You wonder why the children are fleeing from the masajid. They're not happy to practice Islam. Why the youth are looking for happiness elsewhere, in drugs and in alcohol, in girls, in fast cars, in the dunya, in the things that amaze them. Why? It's because the rituals that they've been taught to do, they've been taught only to do it as rituals. They have not been taught that the reason why we pray is because Allah said in the Quran, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ وَالْبَغِيِّ. That verily the prayer prohibits you from fasad and evil and bad deeds. So now when he prays, he's going to be thinking about this. This salat is supposed to be helping me do this. So he dwells further to learn about salat. He understands the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the first thing to be lifted off to the skies will be khushu'. They're having this God consciousness in the salah. So he'll start training himself on concentrating in the prayer, reflecting and understanding. So my point is that happiness will come about by this added ingredient of understanding why we do what we have to do in Islam. And this is a job of the parents. Another role of the parents vis-a-vis the youth is not only just giving them this understanding and teaching them about Islam and the rituals and the spiritual side of Islam and encouragement to understand this religion, but also it's the responsibility of the parents to prohibit them from harm. As a shepherd in charge of a flock of sheep, would you take them to, or would you allow the sheep to go to graze in a ground which is bare or where they can eat poison and harm themselves? No. You would be very careful to be sure they go to the best pastures to graze. Likewise, this is how we should be as parents with our youth. Provide for them the best and prohibit from them the harm. Allah Jalla wa Ala has laid down boundaries in this religion of Islam. We have to teach our youth, these are the boundaries and why they are boundaries. What harm they can bring to you as a youth, as a young man, or woman, or girl, or child. This is the harm that's going to come to you if you do this. But we don't teach our children this as parents. Rather we say, don't do this and don't do that. I'm busy, I've got to go. And the child thinks, that's just a military rule, man. It's military rule here. That's the way the child grows up. This is military rule. There's no understanding behind this. Too busy, this is haram, don't do it. I'll see you tomorrow, I expect you tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes. When you want to lay down boundaries, you have to explain. And if you can't explain, then you have to start learning your religion, yourselves as parents, and understanding why these boundaries are there. What harm they will cause to you and your children. and then try your best to explain this to the children. Now, not every time you're going to be successful. Where every one of the youth are going to say, oh, I see that, I understand how harmful that is now, so I'm not going to do it now. Sometimes you'll get that, and sometimes you'll get the youth who will say, well, I'm a bit weak, and maybe tomorrow I'll do this, or next year, or when I'm 60 I'll do it, when I do Hajj then I'll change, you know. Sometimes you might find this from the youth. What does this mean? This tells you something very fundamental. As parents, we must understand this. That we are not responsible as parents for their guidance. Allah is responsible for their guidance. We are not responsible for their hearts, what they accept of Islam and what they reject. This is in the hands of Allah. Our job is to relay the message and be the best example that we can be, and not show them contradictions. Fulfill your duty, which you've been told to do as parents, and Allah will fulfill His promise. You fall short in your duties as parents, and don't expect Allah to fulfill His promise. This is the Qawm, this is the Sunnah of Allah, and you will find no change in the Sunnah of Allah. We find also some parents are very negligent towards their children behind closed doors. They know what their children are up to, but they remain silent. They know their children are free mixing boys and girls, but they do nothing. They choose silence instead. They know the child's on the internet in his room or in another room. He's locked the door, don't know what he's doing, but he's there. Who is he chatting to? Who is she, chatting to? But they remain silent. Parents today are their own worst enemies. They wonder why their children have grown up to be into drugs and following football stars, pop stars, and looking for attention from society, the evil society that's out there into drugs. It's because when they saw all this evil their children were involved in, they remained silent. And this is from the punishment. This is from the punishment from Allah upon the parent, that the child will go astray. The child will be far from Allah. No parent would want that for his children. But if we remain silent, then we will feel that punishment. Is there anybody in the history of Islam that has disobeyed Allah, not sought forgiveness, not changed his way, and then escaped punishment? Escaped harm and difficulty in this life, and the next obviously not. Of course, if one makes istighfar and tawbah and changes his ways and fixes the affairs as best he can, this is a different matter. On the phones, we listen to our children on the phones. As parents, what do? Do you listen to them? Do you ask them after who's on the phone? Why are you talking like a gangster on the streets on the phone? Yeah. And when you're at home with me, you talk like a decent man here, like a good young Muslim boy. Why are you imitating the kuffar? Do we have these conversations with our children, with our youth? We prod them, make them think, or do you just remain silent? Oh, hikmah. You have to hikmah all the time. Yes, we have hikmah. But this is not from hikmah that you remain silent upon the evil at all times. Yeah, maybe at times you will see something bad, you will see an evil, and you choose silence at that particular point. But that's not your methodology, not manhaj, that's not your aqeedah, that's not your belief, that's not what you practice all the time. There's times when you'll let things go, there's times when you'll be firm and say, no, this is not going to happen. You've got to change, you've got to stop, you've got to do this, this is wrong, because Allah's going to be angry with you. And you believe me, trust me, brothers. If you do this to your youth, young youth, at a young age, and you tell them the harm that they're going to cause themselves and others around them by this sin, by this disobedience, if they continue, and if Allah does choose to give them some harm out of it, they are the most quickest to learn from their mistakes, quicker than you and I. Wallahi, these kids are quicker. Why? Because they remember very well what they were told, but they didn't truly or fully have conviction in the belief of what they've been told. But when it hits them, Then they think, wow, I was warned about this. Because they're young. They have got less influence of this life in their heads, so they can reflect quicker. But what if you don't even tell them, and then harm comes to them? How are they going to realize where their mistake was? When you remain silent over their corruption and evil and bad deeds all the time. So this is a danger. And for the sisters, if there's any sisters listening, how many times has the mother been treacherous to her own children? I call it treachery, cheating them. She knows he's doing something bad, or she's doing something bad, but she hides it from the father, her husband. I can't tell my dad. I can't tell his dad this. His dad finds out, whoa. She thinks she's protecting him or her, but she's actually aiding in his or her destruction. Obviously, if the man was a tyrant, an oppressive, creature on the earth, and of course, you won't tell him anything because he'll make things worse, oppress. But unfortunately, our women are so weak these days. They don't even like the raising of a voice in the house sometimes. How do you raise your voice at the children? It's too loud. This is their downfall. Allah Jalla wa Ala has made firmness where there needs to be firmness, and gentleness where there needs to be gentleness. As long as the father exercises both, don't hide from him the mistakes of the children. Because when you hide the mistakes of your children in front of him, what are you teaching this child? You're teaching the child that the child can lie to his dad, can hide from his father these sins and these bad things. You taught them that very good lesson. You've also taught them something else. That they can sit in front of you and disobey you, and you're just going to tell them not to do it, and that's it. But you've also taught them another bad lesson. You've taught them that the father's not the man of the house. I am. The woman is. You've also taught them how to behave when they grow up as parents. He'll do the same thing. He'll expect the same thing from his wife and his children. The amount of corruption that comes forth, or evil, just from that one action of the woman, remaining silent, not correcting the evil, not informing the father of the corruption that's going on in the home, is treacherous to her husband, treacherous to her child, and a disobedience to Allah. So let them take heed. I'll give you two examples before I move on to the second part of this lecture of how mothers were of the past and the great sons they raised. Many years ago in Uzbekistan, a baby was born. His mother was, mashallah, a strong Muslimah. Very strong Muslimah. Understood Allah, understood her obligations, and was one who was steadfast upon the religion. She said, Allah was my Lord, and she remained steadfast upon this. But she had one son. My mother was one who made complete tawakkul and reliance upon Allah. She used to pray immensely for her son. Her son was born blind, unable to see. Then he lost his father, who became an orphan. So here you have a patient mother raising the child on her own, who's blind, always, daily making dua to Allah Jalla wa Ala for this son of hers to have his sight returned. Wallahi, many of us, when we see a disability in our children, we completely close the door of even asking Allah to take that disability away. We have, unconsciously convinced ourselves that once this child has a disability, it's impossible for anybody to make this disability go away. That's it. Allah's given it to the child. That's it. It's my child. I've got to get on with it. We forget Allah is Al-Qawi, Al-Aziz. وَيَفْعَلُ مَا يَشَاءُ إِنَّمَا يَكُونُ كُن فَيَكُونُ. That He just says, be, and it is. He can change anything. He can do anything. But we don't make dua to lift this disability. Like this woman, she made dua day in, day night, looking for the best parts of the day to make dua. Oh Allah, return the sight to my child. Oh Allah, take his blindness away. Yet we find Muslims today, their tawakkul in Allah, their reliance on Allah, or their connection with Allah is so small, so little, that they don't have the power or the ability to ask Allah to take this huge burden that they see in front of them away, thinking that nobody's got the ability to change this. Deep down, they probably do believe, yeah, Allah could change it if He wanted, but they don't. They feel they've never seen it happen. You know, someone was disabled and his disability all of a sudden has gone. What's the point of making that dua? That's the attitude that we are being brought up with. Whereas this woman was quite the opposite, making dua, making jihad in her dua. What she did one day was, she packed her bags and her son's bag, and he's blind, and she travelled with him to Mecca. From Uzbekistan to Mecca, back in the days. And why did she travel? To give him an Islamic education. An Islamic education which she could not get where she was. She wanted him to learn from the best of the scholars of Islam at the time. So she done this long travel with her blind son, making dua continuously. And when she got to Mecca, she began to make her son attend, whilst he's blind, the classes of the science of hadith and ilm al-rijal. This man, this young boy grew up. He grew up to be Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari, rahimahullah. We know Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari. This man Muhammad ibn Ismail, what did he do? And this is the icing on the cake. What did he do? He travelled. Obviously, he got his sight back, didn't he? When he was young, he got his sight back. Allah answered her dua, and then he began to travel. His mother was his role model. She travelled. For him to get an education, he travelled from country to country to country, checking hadith, compiling them, so that the world after him would understand their religion of Islam. This is the sacrifice that she made, and this is what Allah Jalla wa Ala gave her and gave him. An example for our mothers. Another example, I'll do this one quickly, is in another land, in Baghdad, in Iraq, at another time. There was a child who was very poor, lived with his mother who was very poor, barely had a roof over her head. They lived in what they called a kukh, a shack. That's where they lived. They had no home, but a shack they lived in. The mother and the child. When the winds of Baghdad used to blow, she would gather him with whatever she had to huddle him to keep him warm. This is the sacrifice the mother did for the son. She used to escort him to Fajr in the dark as his son grew up. She used to grab him by his hand, take him to Fajr. We men don't even take our children to Fajr. And we expect our women to get out of their beds, take out our children to Fajr. Do we even make it ourselves? But in this situation, in this example, in the darkness before Fajr. What's before Fajr? Al-Qiyam. She used to wake him up. He used to take him. Make sure he's safe in the masjid. And what did she used to do? After she prayed in the masjid, she used to wait outside for him. And she wouldn't move until he comes. And then escort him back home. What did he used to do in that period after Fajr? This young lad. He used to sit in the masjid and learn the sciences of hadith. Learn about hadith from the scholars of hadith in that masjid. And then when he's finished learning, after duha or zawal, then she would take him home and raise him in this way. She was indeed a strong believer in Allah Jalla wa Ala. She was one who understood how to be a role model, how to raise her youth, her children. Her child became the great Imam of this ummah, Imam Ahmed.